Let's start in chapter 18, verse 7. Well, we covered it last week, but we'll start again with that. We mentioned that the tribe of Dan did not follow Yehoshua's command to drive out all the enemies in the given territory they're supposed to have. So they didn't have much of a territory, they didn't have much of possession. And they wanted to find a place to that could settle and to become part of the tribe of Dan. So again, we're on chapter 18, verse 7. It says, Vayelchu chameshes anashim. 5 men. They sent 5 men out to find an area where they could reside. Vayabo loisha, they came to the place. Yosh loish vayeru es am asher b'gebo yosheves lebetach. And when they noticed that there were people there living securely, Kimishpat Sidonim, it seems like they were like the man of Sidonim, and Sidon was a tribe that was out of the border of Israel, it was north of Israel. And this place that they saw people living also was a peaceful group of people, like the Sidonim who lived out of the area. And they were secure, happy. And there was no one that will cause any embarrassment. And also there was no heir. They had no dynasty as such for some reason. They didn't have that. And they were far from the people of Sidon. They had nothing to do with anybody else. They seemed to be very peaceful people. Okay. Vayomeru, and the people of Dan, these 5 people said, Kumav and Alehem, let's all go, gather together, and go against these people, drive them out. We saw this land, and it's a great land. And they were people done. When they got the report, they were just quiet. They didn't react to it. I'll take us low. And the people, these 5 people, told them, don't be lazy. To go and inherit this particular land. So now they found this particular land, and now the people of Dan are going to go ahead to this land to try to blow out the people over there and inherit that land. Okay, verse 10. And when you will come, when you arrive in that land, you will see that these are simple people, trusting. And again, they repeated that the land was wide. And God will go ahead and give it into your hands. But a place where nothing is lacking. All the Varshebers, anything in the land. Okay, so now they found this particular land. They thought they could drive out the people who were residing in that land. Obviously, it was not Jews, I assume. It was some other people, and they were near to the border where Sidonim lived. Okay. So then many of the people of the tribe of Dan traveled there. They came from Sora, Mishrael, from Sora and Eshtaol, and there were 600 of them came. They all had weapons with them, right, to battle that community that was living in that area. It seemed to be very easy to drive out. So they're traveling. They came up and they camped in the place called Kiryas Yearim that was in the tribe of Yehuda. Since they encamped on their travels in an area where Judah was, so they called the place, that area where they encamped, Machane Dan, the camp of Dan. Till this day, which whenever it says till this day, it means as of the writing of the book of Shoftim. Kiryas Yearim, and it is west of this place called Kiryas Yorim. Okay, they're done, so now they're traveling to that area. Vayavru Misham Har Ephraim, and they crossed the Mount Ephraim. Vayavu at Beis Micha. Okay, now they came to the house of Micha. Remember, a couple of weeks ago we spoke about this fellow Micha. He went ahead and he established some sort of a house of worship. He believed in God, but on the other hand, he had idols in that particular house of worship. And as we mentioned before, there was no leadership. It wasn't a good leadership at that time, and people did whatever they wanted. And so when the people of Dom were passing by to get to that particular land that they're interested in, happened to be passing by the place where this temple was. Okay, what does it say? Okay, so let's go again. Verse 13. By Avrum Misham Har Ephraim, they passed through the Mount Ephraim. By Yavo at Beis Micha, they came to Beis Micha. Now that I mentioned before, was that temple that this fellow Micha set up. Vayanu Chamesh Anashim HaHolchim Magaras Oretz Layish, and these 5 men who originally were sent to search out the land. And by Yomru Alachehem, and when they reached the house of Micha, they said to their fellow people from Dan, Hayidatem ki yesh babatim ela efud u'trofim. Do you know that in this house there is an ephod, there's a special, I suppose, very expensive clothing, and molten golden and silver molten images. And then he says the language, do mata, so you know what to do, meaning confiscate everything. Go ahead, go into that temple. 600 of us, there's only a couple of people in that temple. Just take all the belongings of that temple and just confiscate it. Verse 15. By a Suru Shama, they turned to that area. And they came to that Levi who was in the house of Micha. Remember that Levi, I think last week we spoke about it. He was looking for a job, and he was offered to be the priest of that particular temple, although he was a Levi. But as I mentioned before, during that period of time, people were really doing mixed up things. They were not clear in what the Torah really prescribed. If they didn't know what the Torah was prescribed, they didn't observe it. So they went to this temple that this Levi was, Vayishalo Shalom, and asked, how's everything? Shalom. B'sheish me'os ish, but on the outside remained those 600 men that they brought along. Chagorim kalei milcham tom, that they had all their weapons that are necessary for war. Nitzavim Pesach Asher, and they stood by the entrance of that particular temple. These people, as we mentioned before, they came from the tribe of Dan, searching for an area to establish for themselves. And now, the original 5 men who were sent out, we mentioned last week, the people of Dan sent out 5 men to find an area for them. So now they're going into this. So it was originally sent out to find an area, and they were searching this place to find an area. They found this land. They came there. What did they do? They took all the idols and all the clothing, the special clothing that would use in their service, and the molten images and so on. And this Levi was just standing at the open gate. He didn't know what to do. He said, how could he fight 600 people? And there was 600 people against this Levi, or maybe it was another couple of people in the temple. Certainly were outnumbered, and they really couldn't do anything. That these 600 people are taking all their property from their temple. Okay. It says, the Kohen, he really officiated the Kohen in that temple, and was there, and 600 men had weapons. Okay. So it repeats itself in verse 18. The Eila Bol based Micha, all of them came into the house of Micha. By Yehu as special food, they took. It repeats itself that they took all of the images and the clothing that was used in service, the molten images. By Yom Alem Kohen. And after he saw what was going on, that they was confiscating all their idols and molten images. So he asked, what's going on over here? What are you doing? How could you just be taking everything? So they didn't care. And then they took it because they had some value in it, because it's gold and silver. And what did they answer? So the Danites, the people from Dan, when they had to answer them, be quiet. Put your hand on your mouth. Don't say anything. Come with us. You officiate as a Kohen, as a priest in this temple where we're going. We go to the particular land that we found. You, as it stands now, you are a Kohen for one person. Micha, isn't it better? Is it better for you to be a Kohen to one person, or you're also a Kohen Israel, or to be officiate as a priest for the entire tribe and for a whole family in Israel, the whole tribe of Dan? It's a greater position. Look, you'll be recognized as our leader. And you're only here, you're only a few people. You come with us, you'll have a whole tribe. Okay, well, it's a good idea. The Kohen thought, hey, that's a great idea. And this priest was very happy about that. Everything's very, very interesting. And he joined them with all the things they confiscated from that temple, and this lady went with them. He said, oh, he's going to get a higher position. He'll be now the Kohen for the entire tribe of Dan. See what's going on at that particular time? Yeah. Verse 21. They turned and they went, all of them, to this Kohen who was officiating at the house of Micha, went with this tribe of Dan. They placed all their children and the cattle they had with them and all the possessions they confiscated for them. Now, okay, so they confiscate everything for this temple of Micha. They're traveling now. Now, Micha, he finds out about this thing. Obviously, he must have not been. He was not there when this happened, because only that Levi was there, officiated as a Kohen. So when Micha found out about it, he got a little upset. Hey, Micha. The people of Dan went the distance away from the house of Micha. Well, and then it seems like now there must have been other people who now found out about that, who were in the house with Micha. They screamed out, hey, what are you doing? And they sued the children of Dan. What are you doing? You took out our possessions. How dare you? Okay. They called out to the children of Dan. Him, and then turn their faces towards them. And they said to Micha, what are you crying about? What did we do so terrible? Why are you so upset? And Micha said, look, I made all these gods. And all these gods you have taken. You're stealing my gods. Yes, a Kohen. And the person who I appointed to officiate as a Kohen, you took him too. But when you've gone away, I have nothing else. I have nothing left. And you ask me what's wrong? You confiscated everything that I had in the temple that I built. Vayomru Elov b'nei Dan, and the children of Dan answered Micha, Al tishma kolcha. We don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear your voice. Don't say anything. Pen yifgu v'chem anushim, because you know what's going to happen. We're going to have to kill you. We have these warriors here, more and Mari Nefesh, and they're very upset. And the reason why they're upset because they don't have a possession, a special land, and that's why they're coming here, and they want to possess a new land, and you're going to prevent them from doing so. They might kill you, so you better be careful. And you're outnumbered. They'll kill you and the people of your family. So just keep quiet. And Bnei Dan, the children of Dan, went on their way to that area that they were those spies found, and they continued on the road. And look, Micha said, "Look, I'm outnumbered. So that much more powerful. How can I fight 600 people?" So Micha went home. He was upset. Everything that he had in that temple of his, all the molten images and the gold and the silver that he had, was confiscated by the children of Dan. So then you see what was going on during that time. And I mentioned last week, there are two opinions. Some say this happened after the death of Shimshon, of Samson. Others maintain it happened after Yehoshua died, before Asniel ben Kenaz became the first judge. But we see from here that once there was no proper leadership, many of the Bnei Israel went away from the Torah observances, or they only kept some things, and they also embraced idols to worship. And it could be they believe in God also. Because a lot of times, if you remember last week, when Levi said, you'll find something, you should be prosperous, God will be with you. He's serving idols, but God will be with you. So that was the mixed up community that was living during those times. And verse 27 says what we just had, as a share micha, just repeats that they took everything that belonged to Micha, and also the young man that officiated as a Kohen. Remember, he was a Levi, and they designated him as a Kohen. And the people of Dan went to the place called Laish, and to the people that were inhabiting that land. It was very peaceful, and they felt secure. They didn't expect anyone would want to take away their land. Yeah, they went ahead and they smote them with the swords. And the city they burnt down in fire. Okay, so they conquered that particular area. The aim Matzil, nobody came to save those people in that area. As it said, mentioned before, the closest place was Sidon, but that was far away. So they couldn't even call for help from the people in Sidon, and they just lost their territory. Nobody came, nobody knew about it, no person. And the area was also situated in a valley, which is known as Beis Rechov. By Yivnas Ir, so they went ahead, they built up the city, and they resided in that city. By Yikru Shem Ho'ir Dan, and they called that particular area Dan. The Shem Dan Abiam, after the original son of Jacob, was Dan. So his descendants were the tribe of Dan. Sheyulad Israel, and he was born. Dan, as you know, was born to Israel, who was Yaakov. And the name of this particular place was called, originally was known as Laish. Now I suppose they called it Dan. The next verse says, "Vayakimu lebnei Dan es apostle," and the people of Dan set up all these molten images that they confiscated from Micha, and they set up their own temple. But they didn't believe. I also believe in God too. Well, it is. That's what happened. Now look at the end of this. This is really shocking. This end of this verse. It says, "Bihonason ben Gershom ben Menashe." Now it says that Jonathan, Yonason, the son of Gershom, who was the son of Menashe. And notice, what do you notice about that nun? You see that the second letter of Menashe? It's like tongue between the mem and the shin. Because by right, this is really unbelievable. It really was Moshe's grandson. This Yehonatan, who was he's the other son, the son of Gershom, who was the son of Moshe, and he was officiating as this priest. But in order not to embarrass Moshe, imagine that the grandson of Moshe being involved in idol worship, therefore a nun is placed between the mem and the shin, not to say Moshe's name, but it's like the nun could be called Menashe. And Menashe, not the Menashe of Joseph's son, Menashe was later on became one of the worst kings of Israel. He was a wicked king, and he, at his time again, he went ahead and wanted to have all the people worship idols at that time. So it tries to conceal Moshe's name in order not to embarrass Moshe that his grandson was officiating as a priest in a house where they worshipped idols. So it just shows you the community that was going on at that point. It was a mixed up community. They didn't observe the Torah. Some things they knew, some things they didn't know. Of course, it doesn't mean that everybody worshipped idols. That's not true. Obviously, there were people around who did observe the Torah. But we find pockets of our own Jewish people, our own Bnei Israel, who went astray and worship idols, as you're going to find for the next few books in the Shmuel also. This was a tremendous problem that Bnei Israel was faced with. There was that drive to serve idols. And by the way, you look at it and say, well, they're stupid. Here they go ahead and they make the idols themselves with gold or silver or wood, whatever it may be, and they're worshiping it. They think it's a god. How can that be? The thing was that was somehow the Yetzer Hara was the evil inclination, that there was such a drive for it. So much so, I think I mentioned this one time, so much so that later on our sages prayed to God that God should go ahead and abolish and nullify the evil inclination to go ahead and serve idols, which was done. And that's why you and I, we don't have any desire. I don't think any of us have any desire to worship a stone god or something like that. Because that Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, has been nullified by our rabbis many, many years ago. And after that, it really stopped. Except maybe some people in the world still worship some forms of idols. But the majority of the world do not do it anymore. But it's really a shame to see that Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson was involved in this particular idol worship. Okay, so it says, and his name was Yehonatan, the son of Gershom. Gershom was the oldest son of Moshe, and it was Ben Menashe. Well, again, we want to hide Moshe's name there, but really it was Moshe. Who of Anav? True. Who of Anav?
Gershom was the oldest son of
Moshe. Yeah. Who of Anav? He and his sons. Choyokonim, L'Shevet Adoni. They became priests for the tribe of Dan. Ad Yom Galosos, until, if you translate it literally, it says until the day the land was exiled. So what would that be if I take that literally? The day the land, that they had this particular temple until the land was exiled. By whom? What does it mean? Okay, some want to say that it means that it lasts for a very long time until the first exile of the Jews by the Babylonians. So that means it lasted hundreds of years. But others say that they can't believe that such a temple would exist during the time of David, or Shmuel, and Shlomo. These were great kings. They would not tolerate such a temple in their territory. they would abolish it, they destroyed it somehow. So they say they don't think it means until Nebuchadnezzar, until the first exile of the Jews, when the Holy Temple was destroyed, and that's when that particular temple was destroyed. They maintain that it meant, excuse me, when the Mishkan Shiloh, for when Bnei Israel crossed the Jordan River, they first set up the Mishkan tabernacle in the city of Gilgal. Later on, that temple was moved to what city? Shiloh, the city of Shiloh. And this during the time after, during the time of Shmuel and his Eli Cohen, the Philistines went ahead and destroyed the temple of Shiloh. In fact, at that time, they confiscated even the ark. So, according to many, it means that. So it wasn't that. It was that particular temple existed until the Beit of Shiloh, the Beit of Shiloh, stopped functioning. So it wasn't as long as the simple verse where it says Ad Yom Galos Oris. That not when the exile of the land means when Shiloh was destroyed. And it's mentioned of this particular chapter by a similar Mespesal Micha Shasah called Yemei Hayos based on Shiloh. Well, it in a way explained maybe what it meant until the land was exiled, because they said they put the Pesel Micha, that they meant that all the Pesel Micha was there as long as you had the Mishkan, the tabernacle in Shiloh. So some want to say that's when it was destroyed. When the tabernacle in Shiloh was confiscated by the Philistines, that's when this temple was destroyed of Temple Micha. Others want to say no, it functioned throughout the whole time until the first actual the actual exile of the Jews by the Babylonians under the Nebuchadnezzar. So either one can be acceptable according to our commentators. Okay. Now, but this is what happens when we don't have a proper leadership. People go astray, they make mistakes, they don't observe, and they lose all our mitzvos that we know. And again, in the chapter 19, it repeats that same thing. Because it's now another very ugly incident that happened when we lack leadership, lack sages to teach us the right way. Because again, it repeats, and it said it before in the other chapter, by Amim Mohaim, and all those days, Umelech and Yisrael. Not only a king, there was no leadership. And when you lack leadership, people go astray. And this particular incident that's going to be recorded is going to be a very ugly incident. It's hard for us to imagine how people would do these things. But okay, so that's not okay. But then eventually this incident becomes very, very ugly. And due to it, you'll see that the majority of the tribe of Benjamin will be destroyed. It's unbelievable. But this actually is recorded here as, again, another unfortunate incident. It's known as Pelegesh Begiva. Okay, let's see. We'll start today and take a few verses. And again, the verse again tells us, by Yemamehem, it was in those days, Umelech and Yisrael. There was no king. It meant not just the king, it meant leadership. There was not the proper leadership. So again, this incident either could have taken place right after Yeshua died. Some maintain that. And Osniel ben Kenaz was the first judge. Then things got better. Or some maintain it's in the right time frame. It's right now, right after Shimshon died, after Samson died. This incident took place then. And the next book, we start the book of Shmuel, he already was able to fix things up because he became a great leader. Okay, now it says the following: no king there, and by he ish Levi, there was a certain Levi. And again, we said that other incident by Micha also was with a Levi. You have to remember, the tribe of Levi did not have a land of their own as such. How do they have Where did they live? Where did the Levium live? Every tribe.
They had their own. They had 6 different places, and they lived with the other people.
No, the 6 cities. You're right. That's known as the Orei Miklat, cities of refuge. Right. They have three cities east of the Jordan River, and 3 cities west of the Jordan River. And that's called the Orei Miklat. 6 of them are the cities of refuge. If somebody kills somebody inadvertently, they would flee to these one of those 6 cities that was closer to them. But besides those 6 cities, every tribe donated or gave over to the Levium various cities, and I believe there was 48 cities altogether throughout all the tribes where Levium lived. So over here it says, so again it says that first verse, it says there was no king at that time. Leadership lacked. Each Levi, and there was certain Levi who lived in one of the cities. Or Ephraim, living at the foothill, right at the bottom of Mount Ephraim. So here he lived in the area where the tribe of Ephraim had its possession. And he married a concubine. Okay, we'll soon see what that is. She came from the tribe of Yehuda. What do we mean when someone's a concubine? When the Torah or the Tanakh says somebody's a concubine, what does that mean? It means
it depends. There are several words, right? Like Yosef Zilpar was a concubine, and then she became a wife.
Yeah, but so what's a concubine? What is a full-fledged
like a maidservant?
No, there's more than that. No. Well, maybe they were maidservants, but how do we define a wife? If a person has a wife, it means that he gave her something. It's called kiddushin. There was a ring. In fact, we under the chuppah, we give the ring, which is Hariyat Mikudeshes. He goes ahead and says, "You are sanctified to me, and you as a wife." And then you have chuppah. You have both. So you have kiddushin. Kiddushin is when you give her the ring, and Erusin or kiddushin, and then the suyin. The second part of the marriage is the chuppah. During the time of the Talmud, before that, it was 2 steps. First, you said you told the girl that you are designated to me as a wife, and then usually a year later was chuppah. We don't do that today. We do both of these things we do under the chuppah. We give her the ring.
Tanaim.
Yeah, that's no kiddushin is called. Tanaim is something else.
No, but that's before the wedding.
Tanaim is just they both families agree that my daughter will marry your son. That's something different. That's Tanoim. There's nothing to do with the wedding ceremony. At the wedding ceremony, as we do it today, the chassan is the collar a ring. He says, "You are my wife." You're designated as my wife, and you have chuppah. When we have the 7 blessings. The time of the Talmud was 2 separate times. Usually, he just gave the ring to the woman, and see how you're designated to me as a wife, and usually a year later, the chuppah took place. Okay, so that's a full-fledged wife. A concubine means there's no kiddushin, didn't give her a ring, and there's no chuppah. They just agree to live together. That's a pileges, at least by definition of the Torah's definition. Okay, so you here have a Levi who lived with this particular woman as a concubine, and she came from Bethlehem, Beis Lechem Yehuda. Now, next verse. But Tizner Olo Pilaksho. Now, there must have been some sort of fight. That's what I would say. Commentary says, and this Pilegesh, this concubine, deserted him. She left him. She couldn't take it. She had to leave his house. She ran away. But Telech made told, basically, she returned to her father's house. So it's not working out right. I can't live with this man. So she returned to her father's home. Beis Lechem Yehuda. He lived in Beis Lechem in the tribe of Yehuda. But he shom yomim arba b'chodeshim, and she stayed with him, stayed with her father's house for 4 months. Some want to say it's a year and 4 months. Sometimes the word yomim The Torah also doesn't mean just days. At times, the word yamim is translated as years. Okay, so if it's translated a year, well, it means a year over here to be a year and 4 months. Now, Vayakam Isha. Now notice, over here means Isha means her husband got up, or the man who she was living with. How do you know Isha? When do you know Isha means a woman? Isha is a woman, or Isha means her husband. How do you know that?
I think there's a dot in the hay.
Right. Notice Isha, there's a dot in the hay. So that dot in the hay means Isha Shala. Means her husband. Isha, I'm sorry. Ish Shala. Her husband. If it's Isha, without a dot in the hay, it means a woman. That's the okay. And both is Isha, you know. All right, but Yakim Isha, her husband got up, or he knew that most probably if she left him, she must have returned to her father's house. And so he went after her. He knew where he was living. About to speak to her, to calm her down and to make peace, and maybe she'll come back to him. Lahashiva, to return her to that, maybe she'll come back. The Naro Imo, and this man who was married, who was living with this woman, when he was traveling, he had a young fellow with him. Naro was something, a servant maybe, but Semed Chamorim, and he had 2 donkeys, pair of donkeys. Why 2? Because he was thinking one for himself and one for his concubine. But to be able base of Iha, and they came to her father's house. When the father of this girl saw him, he was very delighted. He was very happy to see him. He thought maybe it's good that they maybe should get together again. Now, notice at the beginning on verse 1, when they're referring to this concubine, they called her Isha, a woman who's a concubine. And over here, when they're referring to her, it says the father of the young girl. It changes, doesn't say she's a Pelegish or Isha Pelegish, and she's a concubine. She's a young girl. Okay, we also see that in the Torah, where, especially you find by Abraham, if you have your book of Genesis, gracious.
It's at the end of Vayera, isn't it? It says Pelegish.
Pelegish in Vayera? I don't recall, but you might be. It says something with Abraham Avinu, where it changes the titles of the men that were with him. If you look in Genesis, gracious, chapter 14, verse 14. You get it? Remember, they were having, Abram was preparing himself for a war against the kings who had captured Lot. Let me just get it. It's 14. It says the following: Abram heard that Lot, his nephew Lot, was captured. His brother was captured by Yorgas Chanichov, and he armed his Chanichov means his disciples or the fellows who was training to go to war. He calls them Chanichov. So they were born in his house. There were 318 of them. And they sued those kings who captured Lot until the place done. Okay, then it says, let me just see. So he calls them Paul Chanichov, the ones who he's training. Don't you see? Yeah, and then after Avram was able to conquer those kings, we go down to verse 24. When the king wanted to give him some of the possessions, he refused, except he said, "Well, besides me, I want you to give any of the booty that you have. Only what the young men did." See, now they call them not young men, but originally it was called Mechani Chob, the ones who was training. So it changed their title. The Chelek Ho'anashim, now he calls them men, and the portion of the men. So here he goes ahead and goes from young men who I train to Na'arim, just the word young men alone, and then he calls them Anashim men. So they're the same people, the people who fought against the kings, but yet they have three different titles. Likewise, we have over here where she's called Pilegesh. She's a concubine at the beginning of the verse. He calls it Isha Pilegesh, the woman who is a concubine, and now she's called Na'ara, a young girl. So that happens frequently in the Torah where a person's title is changed. Okay, so let us end over here, and okay, we're going to see what happens with this young girl who's the concubine of that man. What will go on? Not too pleasant. It sounds pleasant now, but it gets pretty ugly. We proceed in the chapters. The end. Okay, Mitzvah Hashem will be on Thursday at 8 o'clock, right? Talking about the Parsha. And may I remind you, I think it's the next. What's it? I have a lecture coming up with the sisterhood. What day is that? The 20th? Well, anyway, you'll be getting it you get the weekly bulletin, and at the weekly bulletin says when the sisterhood lecture will take place. Everyone is invited. You don't have to be a member of sisterhood to participate. Any of your friends, they can go ahead and participate, and the actual link will be sent to you in our weekly announcements. And also, if you have no people who they don't have a computer, they don't. Also, one can join on the telephone. All that will be on your Thursday. I think send out Thursday or Friday announcements from the synagogue. Okay, Master Hashem. We'll see you then. Thank you so much.